Hello there, Parth Sharma this side, bringing you chess classics in which I am covering top 15 games played by Vishwanathan Anand, aka Vishy. If you're new to this channel, then don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're already subscribed, then do press the bell icon for future notifications. And if you like my work, then please consider supporting me on Patreon and PayPal. You will find the links in the description because your support is my motivation which keeps me going. And not to forget, you will find the PGN of this game as well in the description box if you go further down. So at number 10 of this series, this fascinating game between two generations, it's Mikhail Tal versus Vishwanathan Anand from 1989, and Anand was, I think, 19 years old, or he just turned 19, whereas Mikhail Tal was around 52 years old at that time, and this was their first meeting, and by the way, the only meeting, and it's not my best game because of this is their only game, but it has some technical nuances and quite an elegant finish that Anand provides against Tal, and a lot of times Tal has given that medicine to his opponents, and it was Tal's turn to taste his own medicine in this game when he faced younger Vishy. So as you can see, I have flipped the board towards black side because in this game Anand is playing black and Tal is white. So Tal opens with pawn to c4, the English opening, and Anand responds with c5, knight to f3, knight to c6, knight to c3, and we're gonna see an incredible move by Anand right in the opening, knight to d4, and it is very peculiar that Anand beat Karpov 2 years later in this very same variation. So it was quite fascinating. Although there have been improvements in this position, so let's say h4, h5, and white pawn dashes down the board towards this king and towards the king side, and you might even see rook to b1 in this case. And yeah, there have been a lot of technical improvements that have been discovered by the help of engines and supercomputers. At that time that line was new, so Anand was able to exploit that against some top players such as Tal and Karpov for that matter. And if knight takes knight, then pawn takes knight b5, or even knight a4, the knight has to leave this square, then e5 anyway, and black has a solid center. So understandably Tal doesn't go for this and doesn't hamper, I would say, doesn't touch that knight. He plays e3 just to attack it, just to make it move him again. And now knight takes f3 check and queen takes f3 so that white doesn't ruin its pawn structure by recapturing the knight by the pawn. And now continues his customary development in English opening structures by playing pawn to g6 and just fianchettoing this king's bishop on f8. And normally the moves you see is to play d4 and then black responds with d6, and that is somewhat proven to be better for white. But here Tal plays pawn to b3, and we have seen these structures in that famous Kasparov game. I've covered that. You will find the link at your right hand corner. In the decisive game, or I should say game 24 of the 1987 World Chess Championship, in which Kasparov was in a must-win situation, and he played exact pawn structure, not the exact opening, but the pawn structure was pretty similar. So bishop to g7, and now this is a very dangerous bishop right into, I would say, sniper bishop, or some people call it dragon bishop, because this is looking straight down that rook on a1, and there is only this knight which is covering this rook. So it's very important. And now bishop to b2 to counter this long ranged bishop on this long diagonal. Pardon me for that misfire. Yep. And now pawn to d6. So Anand is basically looking to develop this bishop, but there is a problem. If this bishop moves, then pawn on b7 stays hanging. So Tal plays pawn to g3 to develop his king's bishop, and now Anand plays rook to b8 so that this bishop can move freely and this pawn doesn't stay hanging as it was. Now bishop to g2 and knight to h6. So he's giving full access to this bishop right down the throat of the rook on a1. Possibly not right down, there are two pieces in between to go through, but still keeping an eye. So if you get casual, if you get carried away, then that rook might drop, and that happens quite frequently. Now Tal plays queen to d1 to unleash this bishop right down at pawn on b7. So both bishops now of white looking at, whereas Anand's bishop looks way more powerful because of no knight on f6 but knight on h6. And sometimes it can get useful because this knight usually does not develop on h6 because normally the bishop on c1 is always keep looking at this h6 square. But in this case, since the bishop is developed on b2, there is no tension at all, and this gives another area for knight to come at f5, which can be useful in certain closed positions where you have to open lines, where you have to create some chances for yourself, and usually the knight on h6 coming to f5 often comes very handy. So Anand castles, Tal does the same, and now bishop to d7. So he's not trying to play pawn to b6 and then fianchettoing this bishop, or beg your pardon, not fianchettoing this side but rather this side, but he's trying to play bishop here and then trying to fianchetto it, or maybe keeping his avenues open, because you might even see knight here jumping sometimes, although not at the moment. But let's say if he plays rook to b1 and then knight comes to b5, then this knight is always keep looking at this a7 square as well, and that can be annoying if the position is not, I would say, is not controlled well. So pawn to a4, and now we see bishop coming to c6, and Tal plays to d4, and it was very interesting that Anand takes that king's bishop. I would say not interesting but rather expected, because you have to get through the defender, and if you want to attack and king takes, if you want to keep attacking, then you have to just trade those defensive pieces against your pieces which are somewhat redundant in the position. And that's why Tal is known as Tal. Why Tal is Tal? Because you see Tal making full use of his pieces, and he knows that which pieces are supposed to be used and which are not. And Anand in this game also showing some Tal-like instincts. We have seen it already, and no wonder this game, for me, it was like Tal versus Tal. And here Anand plays rook to c8 to give this rook this file, since there is no bishop eyeing down this b7 pawn. There is no queen here also eyeing on this pawn, so it was fair that you give this. And because there are chances that exchanges might take place either on d4 or on c5, it would be better to give this rook a semi-open file in which there is his opponent's pawn on it rather than his own pawn. And now Tal should have closed the structure by playing pawn to d5. And why do I say so? Because rook c8 was played with the exact same intention to get this trade and give this rook this semi-open file. And with d5 now, this file would be closed. This rook would would seem to be redundant in this position, and white would have some great chances. But Tal, I think, somewhat missed it and played queen to d3, which allowed Anand to take on d4 and take control of the semi-open file with the opponent's pawn on it. Remember, rooks belong to the open files or the semi-open files which with having opponent's pawn on it. That's very important, to have the opponent's pawn in the semi-open file, and Anand follows the basic same principle in this case. And now comes knight to f5, now targeting this pawn twice, as you can see. And now Tal pushes the pawn to d5, this vulnerable pawn, but there are some weaknesses created now for white. As you can see, this pawn on b3 is backward, it's weak, it can be a potential target if not handled carefully, and Anand exploits this and plays queen to b6 straight away, attacking this pawn. And now comes knight to d1 by Tal, not only unleashing this bishop, defending it also, and also queen defends the pawn on b3, and bishop takes b2 and knight takes b2. And you can see, I would say, Anand has seen the worst of it, or I should say the worst in this position that can happen. So it's now his turn to keep attacking, to keep the initiative going for black, because now I don't see how white will, what are white's plan, what will be the strategies. So it's a very good point that he should take the upper hand, or I should say the leading hand in this game, and which he does so. He plays pawn to e5 now. So he's trying to play, let's say, rook f to e8 if not played well, or even knight to d4 in this position to keep attacking this pawn even more. Very important indeed. So Tal takes the pawn on e6 en passant, f takes e6, and here Tal should have played rook a to b1, and that would have been, at least would have enabled this knight to again go to d1 and to c3 for that matter, to give some more protection to this pawn on b3. But here he plays rook a to d1. He's trying to attack the pawn on d6, which was, I think, quite dubious in my mind, because now Anand can play, let's say, rook to f7 in this case, but here he plays rook to f6, and which again gives a bit of relief. And now Tal wants to play g4 to kick this knight off and to triple battery on the pawn on d6, exploiting the backwardness of these two pawns. So he plays rook d2, and now Anand plays e5. Now queen to d5 check. Now e5, by the way, the rook it adds another defender to the pawn on d6. So queen to d5 check, king comes to g7, and now queen to b5, offering the trade of queens. Anand is not having that. He is in, I would say, good position, and he plays queen to c7. Now the best move, I think, in my opinion, would have been to retreat this queen back to d5, and the position would still be better. And with this queen put on c7 instead of b6, this b3 pawn is somewhat secured for the moment, for the time being, but the b pawn is still vulnerable, but at least there is no direct attack at that pawn on b3. But Tal plays here c5, and this gives Anand some chance now to, I would say, keep attacking, and he finds a tactical resource here. Not at the moment, but in the future. It is part of the variation. So he plays queen takes c5 check. Oh, sorry, queen takes c5. He plays queen takes b7 check, Tal, and rook c7 attacks the queen and also defends the pawn. By the way, queen is already defending. Rook c7 actually wins the tempi. And well, Mikhail Tal should have played queen to b5, queen back, and I would say the position was still being better for black, but at least it would have given him some, I would say, some drawing chances if Anand goes wrong somewhere. But he plays queen to d5. Anand, as I said, is having nothing of it. He plays queen to b4, and now his idea is to play rook b7 and to pick this pawn, or even knight d4 for that matter, or even rook c5 is on the cards. So many tactical options trying to cramp these pieces which are somewhat out of the game, and things aren't looking good for Tal in this game. He's been totally dominated. So rook f to d1, trying to put a lot of pressure on the pawn on d6, but queen is attacking directly rather than these two rooks. So the pawn is relatively safe at the moment. And Anand plays rook c5 as usual. Now this queen is running very low on squares, so the queen finds its home at a8. I think Tal was somewhat forced playing queen to a8, and he had to give that pawn up, and queen takes b3. Knight to d3 by Tal, because you just have to keep attacking and you have to bring all the pieces together, because if you are in a worse position, and it won't be good if you don't go well in this position. The rook is attacked, and well, if he wants to, he can play rook to a5, but he plays rook to c2, and queen comes back to e4. e4, obviously, if you want to exchange, then that would be, I would say, not good, because then these two pieces would be attacked. This queen, it would be very difficult for this queen to defend, to keep defending all those pieces. So Anand plays rook to c4, queen comes to d5, and queen to c3. So he's keeping a lot of pressure in this position, and he's trying to, just tickling him a bit by all these little tactics or little positional nuances that there are in this position for black, and he's putting difficult options against him, and it is getting very difficult for him to deal with these difficult situations. So Tal desperately tries to activate his rook, and he plays rook to b2. Rook to d4, attacking the queen as well as attacking this knight, and here he should have played queen to b3 to keep defending this. Might have been black would still be better in that case, but still would have given him some chance, some hope. But Tal goes wrong. Tal goes Auri. He gives a check first and then plays queen to b5, and this turns out to be a huge mistake, because here Anand played a Tal-like move against Mikhail Tal. Take a pause and think what Anand played in this position. Well, if you found it out, that's brilliant. And if you just want to see what Anand played, which fascinated everyone, knight to e3 check. Brilliant move. And white doesn't have too many options. For instance, if you take the knight, then comes this deadly queen c2 check, threatening the rook, as you can see. And if this rook move comes here, then queen will just simply gobble it. And this knight e3 move was very important to calculate, because if king goes back, then obviously you will take the rook. But what happens if king goes to h3? This was the main point. Then comes another beautiful sacrifice. I would again request you to take a pause and think what Anand would have played, and why knight e3 works because of this move. Take a pause now. Well, if you found it out, that's brilliant. And why knight e3 works? It is because of this move, rook to h4 check, another spectacular stuff. This is not in the game, this is part of the variation. Anand Tal played another move in response, which we will show. And if pawn takes, then comes rook f3 check, king g4 is the only move, and then queen g2 is checkmate. Alternatively, after rook h4 check, if king takes, then comes queen h2 check, king g4, and queen h5 is checkmate. So it is because of this rook h4 we saw in the variation that this knight e3 check works. So Tal saw that, and Tal plays king to g1, somewhat forced, and you have to just keep going. Well, if he wants to that, he can take the rook on d1, but Anand was going for mate, and he plays queen to c2 now, threatening queen takes. So the rook is attacked, as you can see, is attacked by the queen also, because that rook is actually undefended. So he plays rook to f1, defending this pawn. And what was the next move that Anand played which forced the resignation? Take a pause and think. Well, it's not so difficult to find out what the move was. The move was rook takes d3, and after which Mikhail Tal resigned the game. Well, it was probably, I would say, the first time and probably the last time that Tal faced Tal. And another player from the past who comes, I think, closest to the Tal was Rashid Nismetdinov. Very fascinating player. If I get some time, I would definitely love to bring his games as well. Well, it was here that Mikhail Tal resigned the game. But what happens if now knight is captured? Well, I'm afraid that this will be checkmate. After rook takes f1 check, king takes f1, rook d1 is actually checkmate. And there's absolutely no defense. The rook is attacked, and if this rook moves, then f2 drops. So the only way that white can, I would say, force the game is to just keep checking by playing these desperado checks, but I'm afraid they also won't be enough. Let's say there go rook f7, and the queen has to give itself up. Too many pieces traded. This will be a goner. As it turned out, after rook takes d3, Mikhail Tal resigned, and what a superb game this was. Not because of it was between these two generations, but certainly it was a quality game and fantastic game, also theoretically but also positionally. Anand just outdid Tal, and people might admire that how it would have been if Tal had faced himself. Well, you got the taste of the medicine and you can see the results. So this was the game at number 10 spot. I hope you liked the video. I hope you liked my analysis. Tomorrow I would be bringing you number 9 in this list. Till then, stay safe. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye.